Hey everyone, I'm Priyanka. I lead business development and operations for the OpenLaw team. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the OpenLaw protocol, our product, and then dive into how we really are a cornerstone when it comes to this decentralized finance movement, and specifically how it relates to the derivatives market. So just to get started here, OpenLaw. Okay, so as I'm sure you guys are aware, we are at a blockchain conference, but just as a friendly reminder, blockchains are really important because they manage assets and they can transfer these assets in a really coherent way. So these assets can be what we're most familiar with, so like cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, but also assets that can represent real property, so like tangible rights, like a home, for example, or intangible property like intellectual property rights. So we can put all of those rights into a tokenized format and have them tracked and managed on a blockchain. And the means to which to actually transfer these digital assets is through a technology called smart contracts. So smart contracts are really great, but they're really nothing more than a couple of lines of code, right? So when we're thinking about mapping out, your rights and obligations, especially as it relates to these digital assets like property rights, you really, really need some sort of legal template to wrap that around. So you want to have your rights and obligations memorialized in a legal form so it actually gives it some real-world significance. And so that's really what OpenLaw is solving for. So we kind of marry the two. We marry the tech and we marry the legal. And that's why we're core infrastructure on the blockchain stack. So we're kind of seeing this stack of different software emerge on top of a blockchain. So at the bottom, of course, you have Ethereum. On the left-hand side, you can think of custody and exchange. So who's going to custody these digital assets? How am I going to buy and sell these digital assets? So here at Consensus, we have products like MetaMask and Trustology. On the right-hand side, we have identity and attestation. So how am I going to prove that I actually own this asset? And so what OpenLaw kind of sits in between that. So we can bring the identity as well as the custody exchange through a legal template. And then beyond that, you can really start seeing this like flourishing token economy. So that's when we can really start thinking about fractional ownership of real estate, fractional ownership of art, IP rights. So you can start tokenize these intellectual property licenses, RegTech, lending, DAOs, everything that we've heard about that's really exciting can really be built on top of this framework. And that's kind of actually our aim with OpenLaw. We want to make your development faster so we can really just speed up the time of which you do that and build applications. In fact, if you check our Twitter or just participate in our online Slack community, we have like a lot of members of our community that are just building dApps on top of OpenLaw. So like, for example, last week or 2 weeks ago, we had someone building a carbon trading platform through agreements they found on the internet that would be useful for carbon trading. So you can kind of think, the possibilities there are endless once you really have these core layer 2 infrastructure set. And so how do we do this? So we have a suite of tools. And the first is Token Forge. So on OpenLaw, you can actually generate a token. So we've actually done some demos on Medium. Like we created a token that represented real estate. We've also created a token that had intellectual property rights. So we can generate the token. You can transfer this token through an agreement that you mark up using our domain-specific markup language. So this language allows you to turn what's normally a static legal agreement, so just a piece of paper, and turn it into a dynamic object. And in that agreement, you can actually embed smart contracts. And then thereafter, both parties will agree, like, hey, I like this agreement. So you then send that agreement to get signed. And right now we're doing that through email. But that signature, once both parties sign, will be memorialized on a blockchain. And then the other tool, I think this is at least worth listening to, if nothing else. We have something called the relayer. So this is really unique. Because we are a layer 2 solution, you can actually schedule the smart contract calls. So there are these one-off transactions, but when you're talking about really complex legal arrangements, or not even legal, just any complex transaction, you really want to be able to schedule multiple smart contract calls. And right now, the blockchain doesn't necessarily account for time. We allow you to do that through the relayer. So that's really important. And moreover, if you have a transaction with a party and you want to amend the smart contract, or you want to stop the smart contract from going, you can do that. You can sever the connection to the blockchain and you can actually cut the smart contract off. So really important stuff, especially if you're talking about transferring digital assets like real estate. And lastly, we have like a contract management tool called Forms and Flows, which allows you to turn agreements into questionnaires. So I don't know how many lawyers are in the audience, but I know if you're like an in-house counsel, you often have to chase the business side to fill out information for an agreement. Through our forms, you can kind of just spit out a form, they fill it out, and then you have an agreement and you can just review it. So it's a lot easier for information collection. And through that, it's kind of, if you really want to think about it, just an end-to-end commercial relationship. So you have every step of the way through OpenLaw. And so today I wanted to specifically highlight smart derivatives. We've heard a lot about that. There's been a lot of papers written about that. So we can actually do that on OpenLaw. So today we just used a sample interest rate swap agreement, but the idea here is that you can automate the agreement using our domain-specific markup language, which, by the way, it's all open source, so if you want to go on docs.openlaw.io, you can play around with that now. You can also, we didn't in this specific demo, but you can incorporate real-time data. So like LIBOR rates or whatever, you could bring that data feed into an agreement, feed that in automatically. And then that can open up the doors to automate payments and other things, and also managing the actual workflow, which is really important. And again, just to reiterate, we use a first draft for the actual agreement. And if you want to have like faster settlement and payment, this of course is a tool to do that. Blockchain fundamentally thinks settlement's like one of the biggest use cases or not use cases, but one of the biggest advantages to blockchain in the financial industry. So that's worth highlighting here as well. We can help with that. And then we can also, again, store evidence of this on a blockchain. So it's exciting. So this is demo time. Let me pull that up. But this is kind of what it looks like. This is OpenLaw. This is what it looks like. So I've actually pre-populated a lot of the inputs, so I don't have to bore you with that. But this is what a generic sample interest swap agreement would look like. And I'll show you what it looks like under the hood, so with the markup language. So on the left-hand side of the agreement, you probably saw the inputs. So we have the groupings, so it makes it easy to organize. And then, so we'll get past the groupings and down to the actual agreement. Okay, and this is actually the smart contract calls in our markup. So here's the fixed payment call, and we're doing it by the minute, but just wanted to give you that. And then here's the smart contract. Here's the floating payment call. And then if you go down, this is the actual interest swap agreement. So it looks pretty good, and the markup. So I'm not a developer, but I will say it took me like 2 days to get the hang of the markup. So if you're a lawyer, it's actually, the bracketed text, as you see here, is actually pretty user-friendly, not too hard. So yeah, kind of looks like a regular agreement. So let me fill this out. Second. And so this agreement now has been successfully signed. You have it like in your contract management, and then you have both payment calls executed and paying by the minute.